The colony market was a place of noise and cold winds. Metal stalls lined the frozen streets, and bright lamps flickered above as traders shouted prices in many alien tongues. Jaren walked slowly through the crowd, his coat thin against the icy air. His breath came out in white clouds and his empty stomach growled. He had only a handful of credits left, and he kept checking the small chip in his pocket again and again. Those credits were supposed to be for fuel. Without them, his small ship would not leave the dock. He tried not to look at the food stalls. Every scent of roasted meat or hot broth made his hunger sharper. But he reminded himself of his rule: survive first, eat later. Jaren was a pilot, but lately he was little more than a drifter, moving cargo from one port to another. The war had ruined trade, and he was lucky to even have his ship still flying. As he passed a row of stalls selling heavy coats and boots, he stopped. His eyes caught something unusual. In the corner, near a broken heating vent, sat a young alien woman. Her skin was pale blue, almost the color of frost, and her clothes were nothing but thin rags. She hugged her knees, shivering badly. Her long hair was tangled, and her lips trembled as though she could not speak. People walked by as if she were invisible. Some looked at her with disgust. Others with cold indifference. No one stopped. Jaren felt a tightness in his chest. He knew he should keep walking. He knew those credits were his last chance to keep moving. If he spent them, he would be stranded. He imagined himself stuck on this frozen colony, starving, begging for scraps, but still, his eyes returned to her again and again. She looked so fragile, like she would not last another hour in this cold. He stepped closer. His boots crunched on the icy ground. The alien girl lifted her head. Her eyes were large and bright, a deep shade of violet that seemed almost to glow under the street lamps. For a second, he felt something stir inside him. "Strange pull, are you all right?" Jaren asked. His voice came out rough. He was not used to talking kindly to strangers. She tried to answer, but no words came. Only a weak sound left her throat. Her fingers clutched at her chest as though to say, "I am cold." Jaren looked at the coat stall just behind him. The trader was a thick, grumpy man with 4 arms, arranging heavy jackets made from fur and synthetic fabric. Jaren pulled out his credit chip. He stared at it for a long moment. This chip was his lifeline. Without it, he was lost. But then he looked back at the girl. Her small frame shook violently, her violet eyes pleading without words. "Damn it," he muttered and stepped to the stall. "How much for the coat?" The trader raised his brows. "For you, human? Too expensive. Better for you to save your money." "I asked the price," Jaren said firmly. The trader smirked and named a sum. It was almost exactly the number of credits Jaren had left. His hand trembled as he held out the chip. It felt like handing over his entire future. The trader laughed, scanning the chip, and tossed the heavy coat into Jaren's arms. Jaren turned quickly, kneeling in front of the alien girl. "Here," he said softly, placing the coat over her shoulders. She flinched at first, then slowly pulled it around herself. Her shivers began to ease as the warmth wrapped her body. Her lips parted, and at last she whispered one word. A word broken but clear. "Thank you?" The sound struck Jaren more deeply than he expected. He had not heard gratitude in a long time. He gave her a small nod. The people around them had stopped to watch. Whispers spread in the market. A human spending his last credits on an alien beggar. Madness. Some shook their heads. Others sneered, but Jaren ignored them all. The girl tried to stand. Her legs were weak, and she nearly fell. Jaren caught her by the arm. Steadying her, for a moment their eyes met again, and he felt the weight of something unspoken, something larger than this moment. He looked toward the dockyard where his ship waited. He had no fuel, no food, and now no credits. Yet as he held the girl's trembling hand, he felt he could not leave her behind. The cold wind howled through the market. Traders called out again. People moved. Life continued. But for Jaren, time seemed to pause. He had made a choice that might ruin him or save them both. And somewhere in the shadows of the market, unseen eyes watched the scene. Eyes that followed the alien woman. Eyes that narrowed when they saw Jaren's kindness. A storm was about to begin, and Jaren had just stepped into the center of it. The market slowly returned to its noise after Jaren placed the coat on the alien woman. But a few still whispered, pointing at the strange pair. A human pilot spending his last credits on a stranger was not common. Not in this colony where survival was always a struggle. Jaren felt the weight of many eyes on his back. He did not care, yet a part of him wondered what kind of trouble he had just invited. The alien woman sat silently, clutching the coat close to her body. Her lips were still blue, but her shaking was less now. "Can you stand?" Jaren asked. His voice was softer than before. She blinked at him slowly and tried to rise. Her legs failed at first, but he steadied her with a strong grip. Together, they managed to move a few steps away from the cold corner. The trader who had sold the coat was grinning at Jaren. "You are a fool, pilot," he said. "That money was your life. Now it is mine." He laughed and turned back to his stall. Jaren ignored him. He looked at the girl. Her violet eyes met his, and she whispered again, "Thank you." The words were broken, but her effort was clear. She was trying to speak his language. Jaren shook his head lightly. "Don't thank me yet," he muttered. He knew the truth. Without credits, he could not buy fuel. He could not even afford food tonight. Still, when he saw her fragile figure, he felt his decision was not a mistake. The crowd thinned as evening lights began to glow over the colony streets. Jaren guided her toward the dockyard. His ship was not much, just a small freighter with old engines and a rusty hull. But to him, it was home as they walked. Jaren noticed how people stared, some with curiosity, some with anger. A few even muttered insults under their breath. Relations between humans and aliens were not warm here. This colony was a mix of many races. But kindness was rare. The woman stumbled again. Jaren caught her arm quickly. Her necklace slipped from beneath the coat for a moment. A small silver charm shaped like a star with strange markings. Jaren frowned but said nothing. He tucked it back under the coat gently. When they reached his ship, the girl hesitated. She looked at the old freighter as if uncertain. Her hand tightened on the coat. Jaren opened the hatch and gestured. "It's warmer inside." She stepped in slowly. Her eyes scanned the cabin with cautious wonder. The interior was cluttered with tools, maps and old equipment. The heater hummed weakly, but compared to the market's freezing air, it was a small paradise. Jaren offered her a seat. He dug into a storage box and found a ration pack. It was bland and dry, but it was food. He poured her a cup of warm water and placed it in her hands. She drank carefully, each sip easing her trembling. "You're safe here," Jaren said, "at least for now." Her gaze softened. She placed a hand on her chest and whispered again, "Lyra." Jaren blinked. It took him a moment to realize she was telling him her name. "Lyra," he repeated slowly. She nodded weakly. A faint smile touched her lips for the first time. Jaren leaned back in his chair. He felt exhaustion pressing on him, but his mind was restless. He had saved her, yes, but at what cost? His ship could not leave without fuel, and he had just given up his last chance. Still, when he looked at Lyra, he felt something stir. A sense that this meeting was not an accident. Outside, the colony lights flickered. Patrol drones hummed through the sky. Jaren knew the docks were never fully safe. Rumors spread fast here. If anyone saw him helping an alien beggar, it could bring questions. Questions he was not ready to answer. Inside the ship, Lyra rested. Her eyes closed slowly as warmth and food gave her strength. Jaren watched her for a while. He noticed again the silver necklace against her chest. The strange markings glimmered faintly in the dim light. He felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. There was something about her, something hidden. Jaren could not explain it, but deep inside, he knew this act of kindness was only the beginning. Trouble was coming, and he had just tied his fate to hers. As night fell over the colony, Jaren stood by the window, staring at the endless stars above. He had lost everything: credits, security, safety. Yet for the first time in months, he did not feel empty. Behind him, Lyra whispered in her sleep, words he did not understand. Her voice was soft, almost musical, and as he listened, he wondered who she really was, and why fate had placed her in his path. Outside, unseen in the shadows of the dockyard, figures moved, watching, waiting. Their eyes glowed faintly as they tracked the old freighter. The girl was not forgotten, and Jaren's choice had not gone unnoticed. The night was only beginning. The old freighter lifted slowly from the frozen dock. The engines groaned as if waking from a long sleep. Jaren tightened his grip on the controls. His hands knew every sound of the ship, and tonight the machine seemed heavier, slower, as though it also knew the risk they carried. Lyra sat quietly in the co-pilot's seat, wrapped in the coat Jaren had given her. Her violet eyes looked out through the window as the colony shrank below them. The endless night of space stretched open, a black sea scattered with stars. For the first time since he met her, She did not shiver, Jaren sighed. He had almost no fuel. He knew he could not travel far. Still, he wanted to leave the colony behind. Too many eyes had watched them. Too many whispers had already spread. He needed distance before questions came knocking. The ship broke through the atmosphere and entered the cold silence of orbit. Jaren switched to auto-control and leaned back in his chair. He looked at Lyra, who was still staring out as if the stars were more than lights to her. "You've been quiet," Jaren said softly. "Can you tell me who you are?" Lyra turned her head. Her lips moved slowly. Her words were weak, but clearer than before. "Lyra," she repeated, pressing her hand to her chest. Then she pointed outward at the stars and whispered a few words in her own language. The sound was soft and musical. Jaren frowned. He could not understand, but the way she spoke carried weight. He wondered what kind of story her eyes were holding. He stood and searched through his storage. He found another blanket, slightly worn but still warm. He placed it over her shoulders. She looked up at him with a faint smile, her eyes glowing gently in the dim cabin light. For a while, silence filled the ship. Jaren prepared a ration meal, dividing it into 2 portions. He placed one in front of Lyra. She hesitated before taking a bite. It was clear she was not used to such food, but hunger won over doubt. "You must have family somewhere," Jaren said quietly. He thought maybe someone would be searching for her. At his words, her eyes darkened. She lowered her head. Her voice trembled as she spoke in broken human tongue. "Family, gone." Jaren froze. The pain in her eyes was stronger than any word. He understood even without details her family was no longer alive. "I'm sorry," he said, and for once, his voice carried genuine warmth. He knew what loss felt like. He had buried friends during the war, and he had carried the silence of loneliness ever since. Lyra touched the silver necklace around her neck. Her fingers traced the strange markings. Jaren noticed the way the charm glowed faintly. As if alive, he wanted to ask about it, but the sadness in her eyes kept him silent. Hours passed slowly. The stars moved outside. Jaren adjusted the course toward a nearby moon where he hoped to hide and think. His ship was weak, his credits gone, but he still had one thing left: his stubborn will to survive. As he worked at the controls, he heard a sound behind him. He turned to see Lyra standing, her hand brushing along the wall of the ship. She was exploring, her steps still unsteady. She stopped at a small viewport and stared into the galaxy. Her face softened, almost glowing under the starshine. Jaren watched her quietly. He wondered again why fate had pushed her into his path. There were millions of souls in the galaxy, yet somehow their lives had crossed in that frozen market. Suddenly, the ship's sensors beeped. Jaren checked the screen. A faint signal flickered nearby. Something was tracking. He narrowed his eyes. It was not a trade vessel. It moved slowly like a predator waiting. He quickly turned off unnecessary lights inside the ship. "Sit down," he whispered to Lyra. She obeyed without question. Her eyes widened as she sensed the change in his tone. The small vessel outside drifted across the stars. Jaren held his breath, praying his old freighter looked like just another scrap ship floating aimlessly. Lyra clutched the blanket close, her violet eyes fixed on him, trusting him completely. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, the signal faded. The vessel moved on. Jaren let out a long breath. His hands trembled slightly. He was no stranger to danger, but this was different. He was no longer running only for himself. Lyra leaned forward. Her hand touched his arm gently. She whispered one word: "Safe." Her voice was fragile, but it carried a warmth he had not heard in years. Jaren met her eyes. He nodded slowly, yet deep inside, he knew safety was an illusion. Whoever had been searching would not stop. They would come again, and they would be stronger. He adjusted the course toward the moon. The engines groaned, but the freighter obeyed. He knew they could not run forever, but for now they had survived. As the ship drifted through the stars, Jaren realized something. He had spent his last credits, but in return he had gained something priceless, a fragile bond, a fragile hope. And in Lyra's quiet eyes he saw not only survival, but a secret waiting to be revealed, a secret that could change everything. The stars outside burned bright, silent witnesses to the beginning of a story that was far from over. The old freighter drifted in the shadow of a quiet moon. Its engines were silent now. Jaren had powered them down to avoid detection. Only the faint hum of the life support system filled the cabin. Outside the window, the stars shone cold and endless. Lyra sat near the heater, her blanket wrapped tightly around her. Her violet eyes reflected the dim glow of the ship's lights. She looked calm, but Jaren could see the tension in the way her hands gripped the silver necklace around her neck. Jaren leaned back in his chair, his eyes fixed on her. For hours he had been asking himself the same question. Who was she really? Why did helping one starving girl in the market feel like opening a door to something larger, something dangerous? He finally broke the silence. That necklace, it's not just jewelry, is it? Lyra froze. Her lips trembled as if caught between silence and truth. Slowly, she lifted the charm from her chest. The markings glowed faintly, shapes that seemed to shift like living stars. My family, she whispered in broken human tongue. Her voice carried sorrow deeper than words. They, gone, only me. Jaren nodded slowly. He wanted to press for more, but he could see the weight of pain in her eyes. He chose a softer approach. You said your family is gone, but I think they were more than traitors, weren't they? Lyra lowered her head. A single tear rolled down her pale blue cheek. She whispered a word in her own language, a word filled with music and sadness. Jaren could not understand it, but he felt its meaning. They were important, he guessed, weren't they? Lyra met his gaze, her voice shook as she tried to form the words royal. House. The word struck Jaren like a bolt. Royalty. He stared at her necklace again, suddenly understanding the strange power it seemed to hold. This was no common refugee. She was the last of a royal bloodline. Alone and hunted, Jaren rubbed his face with his hands. His choice in the market had been madness already. But now he realized he had done something even greater. He had brought a fugitive princess onto his ship, and whoever had been searching the docks was not going to stop until they found her. You shouldn't be here, he muttered. The people after you, they'll tear the system apart to find you. Lyra shook her head. Her voice grew urgent. No trust. In them only trust. You, the words unsettled him. He was no hero. He was a broken pilot with debts, scars, and no future. Yet somehow this girl had placed her faith in him. Before he could answer, the warning sensors beeped softly. Jaren rushed to the screen. A patrol vessel was sweeping through the system. Its scanners brushed across the nearby space. Searching, hunting, damn it, he hissed. He powered down even more systems, plunging the cabin into half-darkness. Lyra clutched the necklace, her violet eyes wide with fear. Jaren pressed a finger to his lips, telling her to stay quiet. The patrol ship drifted closer. Its lights swept across the freighter's hull. For a tense moment, Jaren thought they would be discovered. He could almost hear the voices of soldiers preparing to board. But then the patrol moved on, heading toward another sector. Jaren let out a slow breath. His heart pounded. He knew this was not the end. The hunters would be back, stronger next time. Lyra touched his arm gently. Her whisper was soft. They want me, they kill all, only I live. Jaren turned to her. Why? She hesitated. Her fingers brushed the necklace. The glow brightened for a moment. Her voice trembled. Key. Jaren's eyes narrowed. Key to what? Lyra shook her head, her lips pressing shut. She would not speak further. He could see she carried secrets too heavy for words. He leaned back, exhaling. His life had been simple until 2 days ago. Fly, trade, survive. Now he was entangled in something far greater. He wondered if kindness had cursed him, or if it had finally given his life meaning. Hours later, while Lyra slept, Jaren sat alone at the controls. Staring at the necklace's faint glow, he knew that little charm was more than a memory of her family. It was a symbol, maybe even a weapon. And if her enemies wanted it, that meant it had power beyond imagination. He rubbed his tired eyes. He could walk away. He could drop her off at the next station. Pretend this never happened, but he already knew he wouldn't. Something inside him refused to abandon her, as he thought. The ship's comms flickered with a faint transmission. A coded signal. Jaren froze. The message was short but chilling. Target confirmed. She is alive. Do not lose her. Jaren stared at the words. His stomach turned cold. They were closing in, and they knew she was with him. He turned to look at Lyra, sleeping peacefully under the blanket. Unaware of the danger, Jaren clenched his fists. He had no credits, no allies, and no plan, but he had already made his choice when he gave her the coat. He would protect her no matter the cost outside. The moon's shadow drifted across the stars, and in the silence of space, the mysterious past of the alien girl began to shape Jaren's future. The moon's shadow had hidden them for a short time, but Jaren knew they could not stay forever. His fuel was almost gone, his food supply low. If he wanted any chance of survival, he had to return to a dock even though danger waited there. Lyra sensed his worry. She sat across from him, her violet eyes glowing faintly in the dim cabin. "They follow," she whispered. Her hand touched the necklace around her chest. Jaren gave a grim nod. "I know," he said, "but we need supplies, we have no choice." He set the freighter's course toward a smaller trading dock at the edge of the system. It was a place used by smugglers, traders, and outlaws, a place where no one asked too many questions, but even there news traveled fast, and whispers about a human with an alien woman had likely spread. The freighter landed with a heavy thud. Steam hissed from the old engines. Jaren guided Lyra down the ramp. She pulled the coat tighter around herself, trying to look ordinary. But there was nothing ordinary about her violet eyes or her regal posture. Even in rags, she carried herself with a quiet strength that drew attention. The dock was alive with noise, workers shouted. Cargo sleds rumbled. The smell of oil and smoke filled the air. Jaren kept his head low, leading Lyra quickly through the crowds. He could feel eyes following them, curious, suspicious, at a small vendor. Jaren tried to trade an old toolkit for food rations. The vendor glanced at Lyra and narrowed his eyes. "She with you?" he asked. Jaren's jaw tightened. "She's none of your business," he muttered. The vendor smirked but said no more, handing over a small pack of supplies. Jaren and Lyra moved on, but his unease grew. Too many faces were watching. Some turned away when he looked, others whispered into comms. He felt the weight of danger pressing closer. Then he heard it. The heavy sound of boots, soldiers. Their armor clanked against the metal floor as they entered the dock. Their helmets shone under the lights. Their eyes scanned the crowd. "Attention!" The lead soldier barked. "By order of the High Council, an alien fugitive has been reported. She is dangerous and must be surrendered at once. Anyone hiding her will be punished." Jaren's heart pounded. He glanced at Lyra. Her face went pale. She clutched his arm tightly. The soldiers moved through the crowd. Showing a hologram of Lyra's face, the crowd stirred, some backing away, others pointing. Jaren pulled Lyra into a narrow passage between stacked cargo crates. "Stay quiet," he whispered. She nodded, her breaths coming fast. The sound of boots drew closer. Soldiers split into groups. Searching every corner, Jaren moved quickly, guiding her deeper into the maze of crates. His eyes scanned for an exit, but every path seemed blocked. Then he spotted a maintenance hatch at the far wall. He rushed toward it, pulling Lyra behind before they could reach it. A soldier's voice rang out, "There, stop!" Blaster fire lit the air. The crates sparked as shots hit metal. Jaren shoved Lyra to the ground and fired back with his old pistol. The weapon rattled in his grip, its power weak compared to the soldiers' rifles. But his shots bought them seconds. "Run!" he shouted, pulling her up. They sprinted toward the hatch. Jaren kicked it open, dragging Lyra inside. They stumbled into a dark tunnel, the sound of soldiers chasing behind them. The tunnel was narrow and filled with pipes. Steam hissed from broken vents. Jaren's heart raced as they ran. Lyra stumbled, her breath ragged, but he pulled her forward. "They won't stop," she whispered. "Fear in her voice, I know," Jaren replied. "But neither will I." At the end of the tunnel, another hatch led out into a different section of the dock. They burst through it, emerging near the landing bay. His freighter stood waiting, old and battered but ready. Soldiers appeared at the far end. Raising their weapons, Jaren fired wildly, covering Lyra as she ran up the ramp. Blaster bolts seared the ground near his feet. He ducked and returned fire. Then he sprinted up the ramp just as the hatch closed behind him. "Hold on," he shouted, throwing himself into the pilot's seat. The engines roared to life. Shaking the whole ship, soldiers outside fired. Their shots bouncing off the hull, Jaren yanked the controls. The freighter lifted, its engines screaming. As the ship pulled free from the dock, 2 patrol craft broke off from the station. Chasing fast, Jaren cursed under his breath. The old freighter could barely outrun a cargo sled, let alone patrol fighters. Lyra sat beside him, fear in her eyes. Her hand gripped the necklace tightly. "They never stop," she whispered. Jaren's eyes burned with determination. "Then we don't stop either." He pushed the engines to their limit. The freighter shuddered, alarms blaring behind them. The patrol craft closed in, their weapons charged. Red light glowing at their tips, Jaren took a sharp turn toward an asteroid field. The freighter dived between rocks. Metal scraped the hull, but it gave them cover. The patrol ships followed, lasers firing. Explosions lit the dark void. The freighter twisted and weaved through the field, Jaren's hand steady on the controls. Lyra watched him, her fear slowly shifting to awe. This man had nothing, no money, no allies, yet he risked everything for her. One patrol ship clipped an asteroid and exploded. The second pulled back, its pilot deciding the chase was too dangerous. Jaren pushed the freighter deeper into the rocks, finally losing sight of the enemy. He leaned back, chest heaving. Sweat dripped from his forehead. Lyra touched his arm, her violet eyes soft. "You save me," she whispered. Jaren shook his head. "Not yet," he said. "This is only the beginning. Outside." The asteroids drifted slowly, hiding them in their cold embrace. But Jaren knew danger was not gone. The hunt had only just begun. The freighter floated in silence among the asteroids. The ship's alarms had finally quieted, but Jaren knew the danger was still close. Patrol ships could return at any moment. For now, the only protection was the thick rocks drifting around them. Inside the cabin, the dim lights flickered. Jaren wiped sweat from his forehead. His hands still trembled from the chase. He had faced patrols before, but never with someone else's life tied to his own. Lyra sat across from him, her blanket wrapped tight. Her violet eyes fixed on him with an expression that was not fear anymore. It was trust. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence stretched until Jaren finally broke it. "You need to tell me the truth." His voice was firm, but not unkind. "If I'm going to keep you alive, I need to know what I'm up against." Lyra lowered her head. Her hands clutched the silver necklace again. The markings on it glowed faintly in the low light. Her lips trembled before she whispered, I'm last of what?" Jaren asked, leaning closer. "Royal House," she said slowly. Her words cracked but clear. "Family. Gone, all killed, only me." Jaren felt the weight of her confession. He leaned back, rubbing his face, the whispers, the patrols, the coded transmissions. It all made sense now. She was not just a refugee. She was the heir of a fallen royal line, and someone powerful wanted her erased. "Why are they after you?" he asked quietly. Her violet eyes shimmered with sadness. "They want necklace key." She held it up, the charm glowing brighter for a moment. "Open. Gate, old power." Jaren stared at it. His gut twisted. If she was telling the truth, then this was bigger than anything he had imagined. A symbol of power, a key to something ancient. It was no wonder they were hunting her. "Why me?" he asked at last, his voice low. "You could have hidden with anyone. Why trust me?" Lyra's gaze softened. She reached out and touched his hand. Her skin was cool, delicate. "You give coat not for reward, not for power, only kindness. I trust kindness." The word struck deep. Jaren had not thought of himself as kind in years. He had only acted on impulse, but to her, that one choice meant everything. Silence returned for a while. The freighter drifted among the asteroids. The stars outside burned like cold fires. Lyra rested against the wall, exhaustion pulling her into sleep. Jaren watched her quietly. His thoughts heavy, he remembered the war, the choices he had made, the friends he had lost. For so long he had lived only for survival, never for others, and now, for the first time, someone looked at him not with suspicion but with trust. Hours later, a soft beep from the comms woke him from his thoughts. A faint signal pulsed across the system, not from the patrols this time, but from somewhere distant. He decoded part of it. The words chilled him. "Target not destroyed. Continue pursuit." All units converge. Jaren clenched his fists. He knew they had little time. Lyra stirred and opened her eyes, her voice weak but steady. "They come again." "Yes," Jaren said. "They won't stop, but neither will I." She looked at him, her eyes searching his face. "You could leave me, safer for you." Jaren shook his head. "I'm not leaving you. You didn't deserve what happened. And I won't let them finish it." Her eyes filled with tears, but her lips curved into the faintest smile. For the first time since he met her, she looked not broken, but alive. Jaren stood and checked the ship's systems. Fuel was almost gone, weapons weak, but he still had his mind and his stubborn will. He began planning routes, thinking of allies, thinking of places to hide. Lyra stepped closer, her hand brushing his arm. "You brave," she whispered. He gave a short laugh. "No, just stupid." But deep inside he felt a strength he had thought long dead. The ship shook suddenly, the sensors screamed. Patrol ships had found them again. Light filled the cabin as enemy scanners swept across the freighter. Jaren's jaw tightened. He rushed to the controls. Lyra held onto the chair beside him. "We fight?" she asked. He looked at her, then at the necklace glowing faintly against her chest. For a moment, he saw not just a lost girl, but a survivor, someone carrying a secret that could change everything. "Yes," he said, "we fight." The engines roared, pushing the old freighter out of the asteroid field. The patrol ships followed, weapons charged. Jaren's hands were steady now. His fear was gone, replaced with something sharper, purpose. Beside him, Lyra whispered words in her own tongue. Ancient and melodic, her necklace glowed brighter, filling the cabin with light. Jaren glanced at her, stunned. The girl he had saved with the coat was not only royalty, she was something far more. And as the patrol ships closed in, Jaren realized that protecting her was no longer just an act of kindness. It was a mission that could shape the future of more than just their lives. The battle for survival had only begun. The old freighter shook as patrol fire tore past its hull. Sparks rained from the ceiling. Alarms screamed. Jaren gripped the controls with both hands. His jaw set hard. He had faced impossible odds before, but this time it felt different. He was no longer fighting just for himself. Lyra sat beside him, her violet eyes blazing with determination. The patrol ships closed in. Their sleek forms moved like hunters through the dark. Each blast they fired rattled the freighter's frame. Jaren pushed the engines to their limit, the old ship groaning as if ready to break apart. "We cannot outrun them," Jaren muttered under his breath. Lyra turned her gaze to him, her necklace glowing like a star. "Then, we turn," she whispered. Her voice was steady, carrying a strength that surprised him. Jaren hesitated only a moment before nodding. "Hold on," he said. He pulled the ship into a sharp roll, spinning toward the nearest patrol craft. Blaster fire lit the void. The freighter shuddered but kept flying. Jaren squeezed the trigger on his old cannons. The weapons were weak, but desperation gave him precision. A burst of sparks erupted as the patrol ship's wing tore away. It spiraled out of control and vanished into the darkness. The second patrol ship fired back with fury. A blast shook the freighter. Knocking Lyra from her seat, Jaren caught her arm, pulling her close. "Stay with me," he shouted. Lyra's necklace glowed brighter. Her lips moved as she whispered in her own language. A strange hum filled the cabin. The lights flickered. Jaren glanced at her, his eyes widening. The necklace was not just a symbol, it was alive with energy. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Calling," she whispered. Her voice carried both fear and hope. "Calling. My people." Outside, the stars seemed to shift. A faint shimmer appeared far beyond the patrol ships. At first, Jaren thought it was a trick of his tired eyes, but then the shimmer grew brighter. A massive vessel emerged from the void, its form elegant and alien. Its hull glowed with patterns of light like living veins. The patrol ships froze in their pursuit. Their scanners beeped in alarm. The massive alien vessel released a pulse of energy. The remaining patrol craft shook violently before retreating. Their engines flared as they vanished into hyperspace. Jaren slumped back in his chair, his chest heaving. He looked at Lyra in disbelief. You had this all along?" Lyra shook her head. "No. Only now," she said softly. Her necklace dimmed, the glow fading as her strength weakened. She leaned against him, exhaustion pulling her down. The alien vessel drew closer. Its light filled the freighter's cabin. A voice echoed through the comms, melodic and powerful. Though Jaren could not understand the words, Lyra lifted her head, answering weakly in her own tongue. Moments later, a docking beam surrounded the freighter, pulling it gently into the larger ship. Jaren's heart raced. He had no idea what awaited them. The freighter settled into the docking bay of the alien vessel. The hatch hissed open. Jaren helped Lyra to her feet. Together they stepped out. His eyes widened at the sight before him. Dozens of alien figures stood waiting, their forms tall and graceful, their eyes glowing faintly like Lyra's. They bowed their heads as she entered. Their voices rose together in a soft chant. Jaren glanced at her, stunned. They know you." Lyra nodded slowly. Her voice was a whisper. "They are my people. What is left of them? You saved me, so I could find them." An elder stepped forward, his robes flowing. His eyes studied Jaren, then turned to Lyra. Their words flowed in their native tongue, Lyra answered weakly. Then she turned to Jaren and translated in broken human speech. He says, "You gave life when all hope lost. You are honored." Jaren stood frozen. He had spent his last credits on a coat, and now he stood in the heart of a royal vessel, honored by a people he barely understood. Lyra reached for his hand, her fingers curled around his. "You risk all," she whispered. Her violet eyes glistened with tears. "Now." Not alone, never alone, for the first time in years. Jaren felt the weight of loneliness lift from his shoulders. He realized he had gained something greater than wealth or survival. He had gained trust, a bond that tied his fate to hers. The elder placed a hand on Jaren's shoulder, his alien voice soft yet commanding. Lyra translated, "You will not want, you will not fear, from now. You are protector of the royal line, a place of honor is yours." Jaren's throat tightened. He was just a broken pilot, a man who had nothing. Yet through one act of kindness, his life had changed forever. As the alien vessel moved through the stars, Jaren looked out the viewport. The endless void no longer felt empty. It felt full of purpose, full of destiny. Lyra stood beside him, the silver necklace glowing faintly once more. She whispered one final word, home. And for the first time in years, Jaren believed he had finally found one too.